The guy is excited or responding in a bit of agitation. Why? To the full moon. Those lines that are drawn as a foundation around him showing that he's affected by it are specifically identical to the phases of the moon, including the little arch there that's the time, the nights when the moon is not seen at all. Now, our veterinarians are realizing that animals, including horses are very responsive emotionally. Do you know that they are used for children with Alzheimer's? Getting marvelous results, giving marvelous results. And they respond to those children. And they permit the children to pet them and to ride them when some of those horses we try to get on and they just don't want us around. They are a special part of the creation. Now, what am I talking about? Okay, let's see if I can give this pretty quickly. It's been a year or so since I've given this explanation. The moon is now contaminated. And it's a long series of events that cause the contamination of the moon, but it all has to do with the flood, Noah's flood. And it has to do with projectiles coming from the 10th planet, Phaeton, and we know those projectiles landed there. We know that a planet exploded because we have a whole belt, the asteroid belt of asteroids where a planet should be. Each of the planets is a given ratio, starting with Mercury, and Venus and Earth and Mars, a given ratio from the Sun. But between Mars and Jupiter, there's a space that's filled with the asteroid belt. Those asteroids are the result of a planet that erupted. And it all fits into the creation scenario. So the pockmarks on the moon are the result of debris from that planet primarily. Most of those are on the far side of the moon. So the internal material of the moon itself was disrupted. Much of that magma has now contaminated the surface. The moon's reflectivity before the flood its albedo was calculated by many of our creation astronomers to be about 7 times as bright as it currently is. So the reflectivity of the moon has to do with the crystalline element anorthite. And the anorthite from the moon now, I've personally held some of the moon rocks. They contain anorthite. But they're contaminated with some of the magmatic material from inside the moon. Prior to that contamination, the whole surface of the moon would have been totally reflective with this beautiful crystalline material. You getting all that? With this beautiful crystalline material, translucent material, so that the moon would have been 7 to 10 times as bright as it is now. But watch. You got to get that before you get the rest of this story. Creation has answers. Everybody still awake? Yeah. Watch closely. Anorthite that is uncontaminated, upon receiving the rays, the radiation, any radiation, but we're talking about the radiation from the sun, and reflecting that to the earth, reflecting that into space, wherever. Upon receiving that, it attenuates and it vibrates. It vibrates at a particular hertz cycle when it is pure. It's 528 hertz. What is so special about 528 hertz? 528 hertz is the specific cycle, and by the way, that's within the audible range. 528 hertz is the specific cycle that triggers the enzyme that corrects the DNA mutations. Did you get that? 528 hertz triggers the enzyme that by design corrects the mistakes in the DNA. So in the world before the flood, because of that incredibly reflective albedo effect you would have during phases. That's the reason the moon's in phases. You can't take all of good things all at once.